Good day, everyone. I am Desiree David Paumitan, and I will discuss IQ, EQ, and AQ. So IQ stands for Intelligence Quotient, EQ stands for Emotional Quotient, and AQ stands for Adversity Quotient. So first, let's talk about IQ. So, IQ is the total score derived from several standardized tests designed to assess human intelligence. So, the abbreviation IQ was coined by the psychologist William Stern for the German term intelligence quotient, his term for scoring method for intelligence tests at University of Breslau. He advocated in a 1912 book. So IQ test is used as a tool to measure intellectual ability of a person. So William Stern suggested that this mental age divided by chronological age multiplied by 100 become IQ. So scores in intelligence tests are estimates of intelligence. So a concrete measure of intelligence cannot be achieved given the abstract nature of the concept intelligence. So because there are some factors that affect the score in intelligence tests. So what are these factors? So first is nutrition. So we have 8 factors. First is nutrition, second parental, third socioeconomic status, fourth morbidity, fifth mortality, sixth social status, seventh perinatal environment, and eighth is heritability of IQ. So first, why does nutrition affect the IQ scores? So nutrition is indeed one of the crucial factors in the cognitive development of children. So there was a study that resolved that there was 7.3 point decrease in IQ score associated with malnutrition and 4.69 point decrease in children who skip breakfast and 3.2 point decrease when children's nutritional habits were poor. So during childhood, undernutrition causes children to have less energy and less interest for learning, which negatively influences cognitive development and academic performances. So second one is parental. So parental beliefs and values influence childbearing practices. So parenting style has an effect to cognitive development. And socioeconomic status. So socioeconomic status has an impact to children's development of intelligence from infancy through adolescence. So higher social classes have significantly higher average IQ than lower social classes. Next is morbidity. So many health conditions affect the brain and pose risk to cognitive function. For example, heart disease and high blood pressure can lead to stroke and changes in blood vessel in the brain that can lead to dementia. So, fifth, mortality. So higher intelligence means on average have a longer life. IQ contributes to optimal health behaviors such as exercising, wearing a seatbelt, and not smoking. So social status. Many studies agree that there is a correlation of around 0 to 4 between the verbal intelligence of children and the intellectual status of their father's occupations. Next is perinatal environment. So, the negative effects of environmental exposure like environment chemicals, unhealthy lifestyle, behaviors and stress during pregnancy will the fet- affect the growth of the child and its development. So according to Sheman Tao et al., it has been found that environmental exposure during pregnancy have great influence on the growth and development of fetus, birth outcomes, and children's psychology, behavioral and neutral development. So last is heritability of IQ. So there is still a debate about the significance of heritability estimates and mechanism of inheritance. So according to Deacon and Flynn, 2001, heritability has direct effect on the genotype of IQ and also indirect effect where the genotype changes environment, in turn affecting IQ. So those with higher IQ tend to seek out stimulating environment that further increase their IQ. So these are the factors that affect the IQ scores. So where do IQ score used for? So we have four. First is educational placement. So assessment of intellectual disability. So this education system use IQ tests to help identify children for special and gifted education programs and to offer extra support. So it also helps diagnose intellectual disabilities. So the third and fourth, evaluating job applicants and predictors of job performance. So IQ tests are not often used as employment tests. Instead, most employees opt for cognitive aptitudes tests designed and validated, specifically predicting employee success. So, next one is history. So, who are the precursors to IQ testing? So, first, let's talk about Francis Galton. So, Francis Galton, he is an English statistician. First attempt at creating a standardized test for rating a person's intelligence. He believed that intelligence has largely a product of heredity, by which he did not mean genes, although he did develop several pre-Mendelian theories of particulate inheritance. He hypothesized that there should exist a correlation between intelligence and other observable traits such as reflexes, muscle grip, and head size. So after gathering data, he was unable to show any correlation that he eventually abandoned this research. So next one is Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon. So they are a French psychologist, published the Binet-Simon testing in 1905. So this test focus on verbal abilities. So the score on Binet-Simon scale would reveal the child's mental age. Yes, because later I will introduce to you the equation of IQ. So there, the formula of it is IQ equals mental age over chronological age, where how to determine your mental age. So we can use this Binet-Simon test because it will reveal the child's mental age. Next is Lewis Terman. So he is American psychologist, revised the Binet-Simon scale, which resulted in the Transford Binet Intelligence Scale. It became the most popular test in the United States for decades. So Lewis Terman adopted what William Stern suggested, the formula of IQ. IQ equals mental age over chronological age times 100. Next is Charles Perman. So Charles Spearman is a British psychologist in 1904 made the first formal factor analysis of correlation between the tests. He labeled G for general factor and labeled the specific factors or abilities for specific tasks. He suggested that all mental performance could be conceptualized in terms of general factor and large number of narrow tasks, specifically ability factors. So, next one is Robert Yerkes. So, United States military selection in World War I. So, he is American psychometrics. He developed several tests. And like nonverbal or performance tests were developed for those who could not speak English or suspected of malingering. During World War, the Army needed a way to evaluate and assign recruits to appropriate tasks. He based on the translation of Binet-Simon tests. The tests had impact in screening men for officer. So the test did have a strong impact in some areas, particularly in screening men for officer training. So at the start of the war, the Army and National Guard maintained 9,000 officers. So by the end, 200 officers presided and two-thirds of them had started their careers in training camps where the tests were applied. So there are also some areas that affect our IQ. First is age. So IQ can change to some degree over a course of childhood. So IQ testing have reported IQ declines with age after the beginning of adulthood. So scientists have long known that our ability to think quickly and recall information, also known as fluid intelligence, peaks around age 20 and begins a slow decline. So there is significant changes on how the brain function as people age. So second one is sex differences in intelligence. So many researchers have argued that there are no significant sex differences in general intelligence. Females perform better on tasks related to verbal ability. Males perform better on tasks related to rotation of objects in space or spatial ability. Differences between male and female performance in math-related tests is contested, and in meta-analysis focusing on gender differences in math performance found nearly identical performance for boys and girls. So males have larger brains than females when corrected for body size, and brain size is positively correlated with intelligence. So there is no term as sex differences in intelligence. Somehow there are areas where male perform better than females, and also there are areas that female perform better than male. So race. Third one is race. No scientific evidence has emerged that the average IQ score of different population groups can be attributed to genetic difference between those groups. So growing evidences indicates that environmental factors, not genetic ones, explain racial IQ gap. Example, the black and white Americans. So the environment has been responsible for observed differences. So traditional explanation for the black and white test score gap have not stood up well to the test of time. So during 1960s, the most liberals blamed the gap on some combination of black poverty, racial segregation, and inadequate funding of black schools. So that's why black Americans has lower IQ than white Americans. Music. So musical training in childhood correlates with higher than average IQ. But a meta-analysis concluded that music training does not reliably enhance children and young adolescents' cognitive or academic skills. It is popularly thought that listening to classical music raises IQ. However, multiple attempted replications have shown that this is at best a short-term effect, lasting no longer than 10 to 15 minutes. So, and it's not related to intelligence or has a high intelligence. So, according to Alexander Khalil, playing music gives the brain a multi-sensory workout that can strengthen memory, help us pay attention, and perhaps improve reading ability. So music can help us to remember things, but it is just in a short-term effect. Next is brain anatomy. So several neurophysiological factors have been correlated with intelligence in humans, including ratio of brain weight to body weight, size, shape, and activity level of different parts of the brain. So specific features that may affect IQ include the size and shape of the frontal lobes, the amount of blood and chemical activity, the total amount of gray matter in the brain, and the overall thickness of the cortex and the locus thallic rate. So the larger brain size and volume is associated with better functioning and higher intelligence. So the larger your brain, even its size and weight, will really associate that you also have that person also have a high IQ. Next is social correlation. So we have two. First is school performance, and then second one is the job performance. So children with high scores on tests of intelligence tend to learn more of what is taught in school than their lower scoring peers. So achieving good grades depend on many factors such as persistence, interest in school, and willingness to study. So school performance, what the child performance at school will really affect their IQ scores because they are willing to study, they are interested in studying, so it will really help them to get a high IQ scores. So job performance, according to Skimet and Hunter, for hiring employees without previous experience in the job, the most valid predictor of future performance is general mental ability. So IQ test scores predict performance ratings in all occupations. So higher IQ mediates job performance. So people with high levels of IQ demonstrated better job performance and has superior problem solving technique. So the main reason that general cognitive ability predicts job performance is because it predicts how people and individual learn job relevant knowledge. So we have types of intelligence tests. So first is Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale. Second is Universal Nonverbal Intelligence. Third is Differential Ability Scales. For the Peabody Individual Achievement. 5. The Wechsler Individual Achievement Test. And 6 is Wechsler's Adult Intelligence Scale or WAIS. and with cognizance and third cognitive disabilities. So, I already introduced to you the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, which is Stanford adopt the formula of William Stern. So Stanford Binet developed in 1939. So development used for children. So it just produced only a single general intelligence score. But we have popular IQ test. It is Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale and Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children for School Age Test. So WAIS, introduced in 1955, developed to address weakness in Stanford Binet IQ test. So it was created to be used with adult. So it provides a number of different scores. So WAIS or WAIS provides a profile of the test taker's overall strength and weaknesses. So one benefit of this approach is that pattern of scores can also provide useful information. For example, scoring high in certain areas but low in others might indicate the presence of a specific learning disability. So result of an IQ test. So according to the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, 85% of intellectually disabled children receive IQ scores between 55 to 70. So a score of 100 is considered average. So if this intellectually disabled children receive between 55 to 70, it means they have a low IQ score. So high IQ score is over 100 is typically associated with high intelligence. So extreme intelligence is 130 or above. So high score usually means that person has a lot of potential, but not that they are particularly smart. And low score, someone who scores below 100 is considered to have below average intelligence. Extremely low scores below 70 are usually a cause for concern. They may indicate underlying learning disability. So 100 is the average in IQ test. So above 100 consider high intelligence and able to do more in life. So on the other hand, below 100 consider below average intelligence. It means that person has learning disability. Or below 70, if her or his score is below 70, it means that person has a learning disability. So this is the IQ equation. So IQ equals mental age over chronological age times 100. So where chronological age, it is how old a person is, or age now. So mental age is cognitive ability relative to what others can do of different ages. So if you don't know how to get your mental age or how to determine your mental age, you can use the Binet-Simon scale because they can reveal a child's mental age. So how reliable and valid the IQ test? So reliability, psychometricians generally regard IQ tests as having statistical reliability. So reliable tests produce similar scores upon repetition. Outside influences such as low motivation or high anxiety can occasionally lower a person's IQ test score. So, reliable IQ tests exhibit high reliability. Although test takers may have varying scores when taking the same test in differing occasions, and may have varying scores when taking different IQ tests at the same age. So validity refers to lack of bias. So according to Wayne, IQ tests are valid measures of the kind of intelligence necessary to do well in academic work. But if the purpose is to assess intelligence in broader sense, creativity and social intelligence, validity of IQ tests is questionable. So clinical psychologists generally regard IQ scores as having sufficient statistical validity for many clinical purposes. Also, according to Nisbet Richard, a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, it doesn't measure your creativity. So IQ test doesn't measure your creativity and curiosity. So benefit of IQ test. So as a teacher, it helps the teachers figure out which students would benefit from extra help. So it can also help identify the students who would do well in fast-paced, gifted education. And for our students, so the benefit of IQ tests, they can get extra help in the areas where they're struggling. So this is the current Wechsler's IQ classification. So this is the IQ range. We will start I-130 and above, then 120 to 129. So 130 and above, your IQ classification is you are very superior. If 120 to 129, it means you are superior, and 110 to 119, it means your IQ classification is high average. 90 to 109 average, just what I said earlier, that having 100 IQ scores means you are in the average. 80 to 89 is low average, and 70 to 79 is the borderline. So 69 and below, extremely low. So that's the end of our IQ. What's all about IQ? Now let's go to EQ, or emotional quotient. Emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence, or EI, is the capability of individuals to recognize their own emotion and those of others, discern between different feelings, and label them appropriately. So the difference between the IQ is just focus on our cognitive ability, but here in EQ, it will focus on how we respond on the things. It will really label how we handle our emotions. So it's also defined by Peter Salovey and John Mayer as the ability to monitor one's emotion, to discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately. So, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. So EQ, or the emotional quotient, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotion in positive way, to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. So studies have shown that people with high EQ have greater mental health, job performance, and leadership skills. So EQ associated with empathy because it involves an individual connecting their personal experience with those of others. So high in EQ means you can also perform in your job and other tasks. Empathy, defined as the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. Not just imagine, but you are putting yourself in the shoes of other person. So history. So who are the precursors of EQ? First is Abraham Maslow. He introduced emotional strength in 1950, and Michael Beldock, he termed it as emotional intelligence in 1964. Bill Uner, her paper entitled Emotional Intelligence and Emancipation appeared in Psychometric Journal. And Howard Gardner, I know he is very familiar to us because his book about the frames of mind, the theory of multiple intelligences, I believe you knew the 9 multiple intelligences. So he introduced the idea that traditionally types of intelligence such as IQ fail to fully explain cognitive ability. So he introduced the idea of multiple intelligences, which include both interpersonal and intrapersonal. So also, Kate Beasley first published of the term EQ in British magazine in 1987. So, 6 is article entitled What Makes a Leader Caught the Attention of Johnson and Johnson's Consumer Company in 1988. So the article spoke to the importance of emotional intelligence or EI in leadership success. The theory suggests that the social, emotional, and relational competency set commonly referred to as emotional intelligence. So it is a distinguishing factor in leadership performance. So last is Daniel Goleman. So the term became widely known with the publication of his book entitled Emotional Intelligence. So why it can matter more than IQ in 1995. So because of his book, so why it can matter more than IQ, the term EQ became known to others. And so next is the review published in the Annual Review of Psychology in 2008 found that higher EQ is positively correlated with first, so better social relations for children. So early social interaction is particularly beneficial for child development. So and the right environment can help children develop strong language skills, creativity, empathy, communication, and confidence. Number 2 is better social relation to adults. So developing various positive resources of social support also can reduce stress, decrease depression and anxiety, and reduce the risk of some physical health concern. Third one is highly emotionally intelligent individuals are perceived more positively by others. So those with high EQ are more pleasant, socially skilled, emotionally aware, and empathetic to be around. Empathic to be around. So fourth is better academic achievement. So according to Ron et al. In 2004, so there are studies linking to positive emotions to achievement show that joy, the hope, the pride, the positively correlated students' academic self-efficacy, academic interest and effort, and overall achievement. So if we are happy in studying, in doing what we are doing, our job, so it can really give us good grades or achievement in our school. Fifth is better social dynamics at work as well as better negotiating ability and better psychological well-being. So it also associated with fewer social problems. So there are 5 characteristics or elements of EQ according to Daniel Goleman. First is self-awareness. Second is self-regulation. Third is motivation. Fourth is empathy. And last is social skills. So let's talk about self-awareness. So if you're self-aware, you always know how you feel, and you know how your emotions and your actions can affect the people around you. So being self-aware when you were in a leadership position also means having a strength, having a clear picture of your strength and weaknesses, and it means behaving with humility. So self-awareness is about focusing your awareness in yourself. It is ability to notice your feelings, your physical sensations or reactions, your habits and your thoughts. So self-awareness is important because we are empowered to make changes and to build on our areas of strength as well as identify areas where we would like to make improvement. So how to improve your self-awareness? First, keep a journal or a diary. So you need to write something about yourself, what did happen today, so that you can reflect and slow down. So it's a time for you to reflect in yourself, your actions, your emotions, and your thoughts. Second one is self-regulation. So self-regulation, leaders who regulate themselves effectively and verbally attack others, make rash or emotional decisions, or compromise their values. So self-regulation is all about staying in control. So self-regulation is your ability to remain calm, cope with big emotions, adapt and respond appropriately to our environment. So how to improve your ability to self-regulate? First is know your values. Second, hold yourself accountable. Third, practice being calm. Third one is motivation. So self-motivated leaders work consistently toward their goals, and they have extremely high standards for the quality of their work. So motivation is an important factor in everyday life. So our basic behaviors and feelings are affected by our inner drive to succeed over life's challenges while we set goals for ourselves. So be motivated. So how can you improve your motivation? First, re-examine why you're doing your job, why you are a teacher, why you are making grades. And number 2, know where you stand. 3, be hopeful and find something good. Because in every circumstances, there are always a solution and there always a room for us to grow. Empathy. So, empathy for leaders, having empathy is critical to manage a successful team or organization. So leaders with empathy have the ability to put themselves in someone else's situation. They help develop the people, their team, and challenge others who are acting unfairly, give constructive feedback, and listen to those who need it. So if you want to earn the respect and loyalty of your team, then show them you care by being empathic. So empathy allows people to build social connections with others. So by understanding what people are thinking and feeling, people are able to respond appropriately in social situations. So how can you improve your empathy? First, put yourself in someone else's position. Like put your feet on the shoes of that person so that you can also feel what he or she felt. So pay attention to body language and respond to feelings. And last, social skills. So leaders who do well in social skills element of emotional intelligence are great communicators. They're just as open to hearing bad news as good news. And they're expert at getting their team to support them and be excited about a new mission or project. So leaders who have good social skills are also good at managing change and solving conflicts diplomatically. So they're really satisfied with leaving things as they are. So but they don't sit back and make everyone else do the work. They set an example with behavior. So displaying good manners, communicating effectively with others, being considerate of the feelings of others, and expressing personal needs are all important components of solid social skills. So that's why we need to communicate effectively to them. So how can you build social skills? First, learn conflict resolution. So second is to improve your communication skills. And third, learn how to praise others, saying, "Good job, you're doing great." So in that way, we can motivate others also to improve and do more in their task. So how to measure EQ? So EQ measurement can be calculated by combining into a total score scores that are considered to be relevant according to a certain theory. So EQ test is closer to personality test. So later I will introduce to you the three models developed how to measure emotional quotient. So EQ is typically determined by 5 personality traits proposed by Reuven Bar-On. So Reuven Bar-On is an Israeli psychologist and one of the leading pioneers, theorists, and researchers in emotional intelligence. So these 5 personal traits are interpersonal intelligence. So you all know that interpersonal intelligence is the ability to understand and interact effectively with others. It involves effective verbal and nonverbal communication, the ability to note distinctions among others, sensitivity to the moods and temperaments of other people. Second is intrapersonal intelligence. So people with intrapersonal intelligence are adept at looking inward and figuring out their own feelings, motivations, and goals. Third is adaptability. So they are able to learn new skills and behaviors in response to changing circumstances, stress management, and general mood. So models developed to measure EQs. We have three. First is the trait model. So trait model by Konstantinos V. Trides in 2001. He focuses on self-reporting of behavioral disposition and perceived abilities. So second is ability model. So ability model by Peter Salovey and John Mayer in 2004 focuses on the individual's ability to process emotional information and use it to navigate the social environment. And the third one is mixed model by Daniel Goleman in 1964. So he combined trait, intelligent, emotional intelligence, and ability intelligence. So this mixed model outlines have 5 essential EQ. What I've mentioned earlier, these 5 are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill. So what is good EQ score? So the average EQ score is in the range of 90 to 100. So perfect EQ score is 160. So having a low EQ bad? So people with lower EQ might find it harder to accurately identify emotions, recognize how other people feel or express and honor emotional needs. It is true that these tendencies could create problems with relationships. So having lower EQ or EI doesn't make you a bad person. So if we have a low EQ score, it means it is hard for us to identify what other people feel, our own emotions, of course. So sometimes it can create problems because it is hard for us to communicate to other people, and it's also hard for us to motivate ourselves. But it doesn't mean you are a bad person. So why is having high EQ important? So it helps you to build relationship, reduce team stress, diffuse conflict, and improve job satisfaction. So for students with higher levels of emotional intelligence are able to better manage themselves and relate to others around them. This can help them to develop improved self-motivation and more effective communication skills. So for teachers, highly emotional intelligent teachers tend to motivate their students better and understand their students' behavioral and psychological well-being. So they are more sensitive towards disruptive behavior, academic performances, and relationship management. So that is for EQ. So now let's go to AQ or adversity quotient. So turning obstacle into opportunities. So adversity quotient is a score that measures the ability of a person to deal with adversities in his or her life. So adversities or difficulties, in other words. So we have a lot of difficulties in life, like in our career, relationships, finances, and health. So the term was coined by Paul Stoltz in 1997 in his book Adversity Quotient, Turning Obstacles into Opportunities. So to quantify the adversity quotient, Stoltz developed an assessment method called the Adversity Response Profile or ARP. So Paul Stoltz wrote this book adversity quotient, turning obstacles into opportunities. So every circumstances we face, it is a privilege for us to grow and and mature in how we deal problems and trials in our lives. So why AQ is important? So AQ is one of probable indicators of a person's success in life and is primarily useful to predict attitude, mental stress, perseverance, longevity, learning, and environment. So Stoltz characterized AQ as being about how you respond to life, specifically the tough one. So it is a measure of how you respond and deal with everything from everyday hassle to the big adversities that life can spring on you. So adversity quotient measure how we deal difficult trials in life and how we turn this all tough things we encounter to opportunities. AQ, also known as the science of resilience. So the more resilient you are, the more effectively and constructively you respond to life's difficulties, and the more fulfilling life becomes. So when it comes to dealing with everyday challenges or even catastrophic on, AQ is more powerful coping mechanism than IQ. So resilient mean the ability to become strong, healthy, or successful again after something bad happens. So the ability of something return to its original shape after it has been pulled, stretched, presented, or bent by obstacles. So even if you encounter a lot of trials in your life, you can still stand up again and move forward. So according to Natalie Fratto, IQ is the minimum you need to get a job, but AQ is how you will be successful over time. So adversity quotient involves flexibility, curiosity, courage, resilience, problem solving skills. So that's how AQ is very important in our lives, because IQ is just your cognitive ability, but AQ, or adversity quotient, it is how you respond and deal with problems in life, not just for emotion, but how will you solve problems and how will you be successful over time. So we have four dimension which measures AQ. First is that word is core. So C stand for control, O stands for ownership, R stands for reach, and E stands for endurance. So C, control, stands for perceived control over adversity. So being able to predict and control events fosters adaptive preparedness. On the other hand, the inability to exert influence over adversity breeds apprehensions, apathy, and occasionally despair. By Bandura, 1986. So specific perceived control over adversity is a major source of action because people who believe they can attain certain outcomes have the incentive to act. So having high AQ perceive they have solution. So they refuse to believe they're helpless. Positive, they are always positive. They always think that there is always a way. They always finds a way. So having low AQ perceives problem as they can do nothing. They are helpless and there's no way at all. Next is ownership. So O stands ownership of the outcome of adversity. So some individuals experience strong emotions and discontent when they fail to achieve certain outcomes by Medvec et al. 1995. So high AQ holds himself or herself accountable for the outcome of the meeting, regardless of the reason it's giving poorly. So having high AQ, they are willing to accept and own and be accountable of what happened, but also they also find solution to the problem. So having low AQ worker sees himself or herself as a helpless victim. So R stand for reach, which look at the perceived scope of the adversity. Example, how far the adversity gets into the areas of one's life. The greater the perception of the scope of adversity, the more handicapped such person will feel. So they tend to be pessimistic, irritation, selflessness, bitterness, helplessness, make poor decisions, and become socially, professionally isolated by Stoltz 1997. So someone with high AQ will put setbacks in perspectives, not letting them ruin the day or the weekend. So he or she revolves to learn from the mistakes. So having low AQ would extrapolate, turning the single failure into proof that he or she is worthless or stupid. And last is endurance. So E stands for endurance, which is linked to the perceived duration of the adversity. So an element of endurance is also the sense of hope that this too shall pass. So hope is a confidence grounded in a realistic or appraisal of the challenges in one's environment and one's capabilities for navigating around them. So someone with high AQ will put setbacks, So someone with high AQ know this downtime won't last forever. So having low AQ worker can only see no good thing. So like if you have high adversity quotient, you will know and believe that problem is just temporary. It will not be permanent. It will just pass by. And you have confidence that this will last in a short time. So if you encounter problems, you need to keep going, find solution, because if you decide to have a solution over that problem, everything will be fine. So measuring organization resilience according to CORE. So control. Focus on what they can do to deal with adversities instead on focusing about the issues beyond their control. 2. They maintain a can-do attitude even when the challenges are overwhelming. 3. Seek support from others when handling problems or challenges that are beyond their control. O for ownership. So they take responsibility for any mistakes they made. 5. They take ownership in solving problems even if they did not cause them. 6. Clearly and objectively evaluate who or what have caused the problems. So reach. So still be able to give their full attention and energy on the other areas not affected by the adversities. Not allow the adversity at work to negatively affect their personal lives. And not neglect other essential roles or responsibilities during the period of adversity. And endurance. So continually motivate and rally others not to give up. You are like motivating others not to give up and exhibit tenacity and perseverance even when the situation is bleak, and remain hopeful that the adversities will pass eventually. So that is how measure they measure AQ according to core or control, ownership, reach, and endurance. So that's all. I hope you have learned from what I've discussed. So stay safe and God bless.